If you asked baseball fans to name the stars of the 2000s, you'd get a predictable list. A-Rod, Jeter, Pujols, Bonds, Griffey, Chipper. And then the conversation moves on. But there's a problem with that list. Because there was a player in that same era who quietly did something almost no one else could do: be elite at the plate, elite in the field, and elite in overall value for more than a decade. A player with 7 All-Star selections, 8 Gold Gloves, a World Series ring, over 70 wins above replacement on Baseball Reference, and a resume that stacks up with Hall of Fame third baseman. Yet for years, he was treated like an afterthought. That player is Scott Rolen, and today we're telling the real story of why Scott Rolen is one of the most underrated players of the 2000s. Not as a hot take, not as a contrarian argument, but as a correction to how baseball history is usually remembered. Because once you see what he actually was, you start asking a different question. How did we let a player this good become a footnote? Scott Rolen wasn't underrated because fans didn't like him. He was underrated because of what he was best at. Rolen's greatest weapon wasn't a viral moment. It wasn't a famous bat flip. It wasn't a signature October highlight that ran on every playoff montage. It was run prevention, the hidden plays, the rockets down the line that turned into outs, the slow rollers that became outs, the backhand in the hole that killed a rally before it started. If you're a hitter who hits 60 home runs, everyone sees it. If you're a defender who saves 15 to 20 runs a year, most people never notice. But the standings do. Rolen's value lived in those invisible spaces, and baseball culture, especially in the 2000s, didn't reward invisible value. It rewarded noise. Before we talk about narrative, let's put a real baseline on Scott Rolen's career. His career line, per Baseball Reference: 2,077 hits, 316 home runs, 1,287 RBIs, a .281 batting average, .364 on base, .490 slugging, and a 122 OPS plus. That's not pretty good. That's star-level offense at third base. Now add the part that turns him from star into rare: 8 Gold Gloves, and not a quick burst, 8 across years and teams, and then the ultimate modern summary of total value: 70.1 career WAR on Baseball Reference. MLB.com's Hall of Fame case summary notes that 70.1 WAR places him 10th among third basemen, behind 9 Hall of Famers and Adrian Beltré, who is likely to be one as well. That is your first clue that Rolen wasn't borderline. He was historically valuable. And that's the heart of the story. Scott Rolen's stardom started early. He came up with the Philadelphia Phillies in the mid to late 1990s, and he wasn't eased into greatness. He claimed it. By 1997, he was the National League Rookie of the Year. Not just winning, unanimous in many retrospectives. He had the full package from the beginning: range, arm, instincts, and a bat that could punish mistakes. In a sport where it can take years for hitters to learn big league pitching, Rolen looked comfortable quickly. He walked, he hit with power to the gaps, and he drove the ball out of the park. Defensively, he looked like a third baseman designed in a lab. Quick first step, soft hands, and an arm that could make throws other players wouldn't even try. But even in the early years, there was a theme that followed him his entire career. He played hard, every play, every inning, and playing third base hard comes with a cost. Rolen's injuries weren't one freak incident. They were cumulative: shoulders, back, lower half, the cost of diving, throwing, and reacting to the hardest hit balls on the field for a decade. That injury tax matters later, because it's a major reason the public didn't attach legend to his counting stats. He didn't get a clean, uninterrupted runway, but when he was on the field, he was elite. In 2002, the Phillies traded Rolen to the St. Louis Cardinals. This should have been his coronation. Instead, it became his camouflage, because St. Louis had Albert Pujols, who was becoming a generational hitter in real time. And the Cardinals were always in the national conversation. But strangely, that didn't elevate Rolen's fame. It often reduced it. Rolen became the third name, the quiet guy in a lineup full of stars. Then 2004 happened, and it should have changed everything. That year, Rolen had one of the best seasons of his life. .314 average, 34 home runs, 124 RBIs, and a fourth-place finish in National League MVP voting. The Cardinals won 105 games, and the trio of Pujols, Edmonds, and Rolen became known as MV3. If you only watch October highlight reels, you might miss what came next. In Game 7 of the 2004 NLCS, tied late, Scott Rolen hit a massive two-run home run off Roger Clemens, a pennant-winning shot, the kind of moment that gets stamped into franchise history, and it did, in St. Louis. But nationally, it got swallowed, because that same postseason became remembered for Boston's comeback and curse-breaking run, because the Red Sox swept the Cardinals in the World Series, and because Rolen wasn't a headline chaser. So one of the biggest home runs of the 2000s lives like a hidden gem. That's Scott Rolen in one moment. Now let's talk about timing. The 2000s were an era obsessed with offense, and especially with power, steroid-era conversations, home run leaderboards, big markets, big personalities. It was also an era where defense and overall value weren't mainstream. War was not part of everyday fan vocabulary yet. The average fan didn't talk about run prevention. So a player like Rolen, a quiet, defense-heavy superstar, was almost destined to be underappreciated, because baseball's culture was loud and his greatness was precise. In 2006, the Cardinals won the World Series, and Rolen wasn't just a passenger. He hit a key game-tying homer in Game 1 of the World Series, and in the 2006 World Series overall, he hit extremely well. Multiple sources show him hitting over .400 in the series. That should have been a legacy amplifier, but again, he wasn't the headline, because baseball narratives usually lock onto one or two faces. Even in a championship, a player like Rolen can blend into the team story. But if you evaluate winning baseball, he was doing exactly what winning baseball requires: get on base, drive runs, and erase offense with defense. In the back half of his career, Rolen played in Toronto and then Cincinnati. And this is where any system player argument collapses, because he kept being the same player in different environments. In 2010, with the Reds, at age 35, he hit his 300th career home run, helped Cincinnati win the NL Central, their first division title in 15 years, and won another Gold Glove. That's number 8. Most players lose defensive excellence in their early 30s. Rolen kept it deep into his mid-30s. That's not reputation. That's skill. Scott Rolen's Hall of Fame climb reveals exactly how baseball's evaluation changed. For years, voters leaned heavily on loud milestones and big narratives. Rolen didn't have the loudest totals. He had the complete package. As more voters embraced two-way value, defense, and positional difficulty, Rolen's case became impossible to ignore. In 2023, he was elected to the Hall of Fame with 76.3% of the vote. ESPN noted his resume clearly: 7-time All-Star, 8 Gold Gloves, 1997 NL Rookie of the Year, and a key part of the 2006 champion Cardinals. This was less about finally appreciating him and more about finally measuring him correctly, because the evidence was always there. So why don't people talk about Scott Rolen the way they talk about other 2000 stars? Because his most valuable moments didn't come with fireworks. He didn't build a brand. He didn't chase media attention. He didn't have a single defining national highlight that played every October. He gave you 15 years of winning baseball. And that kind of greatness can become invisible if you don't know what to look for. But once you do know what to look for, it's hard to unsee. A third baseman who hits like a star and defends like a legend. That's extremely rare. Scott Rolen isn't just underrated, he's misunderstood. He represents the kind of player baseball needs to win championships: two-way excellence, discipline, defense, and quiet dominance. If he played today, in an era where analytics are mainstream and defense is valued publicly, he'd be treated like the superstar he actually was. And that's the real correction. So here's the question. When you think of the 2000s, where do you rank Scott Rolen among third basemen? Above Chipper? Above Beltré? Above Wright? And if you didn't think about him at all, does this change your mind? Drop your take in the comments and tell us the next forgotten great you want opened in the vault.